It is a story about division and partition, about a country in transition from British colonialism to independence. Midnight's Children is Salman Rushdie's classic novel about children growing up in an India that is nothing like their parents' India. Deepa Mehta, the Oscar-nominated filmmaker, has adapted the book for the silver screen, and she joins us now to tell us how she approached portraying the story of India's independence through film. And it's great to have you here at TVO.
Nice being here, Steve.
Well, my hunch is that few of our viewers have seen this movie yet, so why don't we show them a little clip just to whet the appetite, and then we'll chat.
Let's go for it.
Roll tape.
At the precise instant of India's arrival at independence, on the stroke of midnight, I tumbled forth into the world.
So many babies. Oh, give it to me.
Mary knew she was condemning the rich-born boy to a life of poverty. Let the rich be poor, and the poor rich.
Who's that wonderful voiceover from there?
Guess.
Yes, I knew. You know what? The second I heard that voice, I knew it was Rushdie's.
Oh, that's
you can
interesting.
Tell. No, he's got a very distinctive voice.
He just did such a great job, but he was totally reluctant about doing it. And
you had to convince him?
I had to totally convince him. I said, because I was sort of feeling that whatever, this Midnight's Children is also quasi-autobiographic for Salman. And I thought we really needed that authority of an older Salim looking at the storyteller who's telling a story. And
good choice.
You think so?
Good choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, he did a good job.
Yes. You're trying to tell the story, obviously, of an individual and an individual's experience and a family at the same time as you're trying to tell the story of a country's independence. That sounds mammoth. How do you, at the end of the day, decide what story you actually want to tell?
I never had any problems, and neither did Salman, who wrote the screenplay. The story we wanted to tell was the emotional story of Salim Sinai, who was born at the stroke of midnight, and his history, and till a certain point in India's independence. If you followed Salim's emotional journey, you automatically spoke not only about a man's coming of age, but also of a country. So there was no conflict at all.
Not necessarily conflict, but obviously as you read the book and as he writes the screenplay, you presumably have to go through it and say, well, okay, we can't tell that part, we can't tell that part. I mean, you've got to drop tons of stuff as you go along, right?
But I think you have to drop a ton of stuff in any book adaptation, because I mean, if the film was a facsimile of the book, I mean, it would be 10 hours long. So it was very easy. We both decided that we'd go our separate ways and write the narrative flow of the film. And we did that, and we came together about 2 weeks later and exchanged this piece of paper. And much to our surprise, and it was a pleasant surprise, we found that our notes were identical.
Huh.
So that, so you felt at least we really have the same vision for what the film's going to be about.
I know you've answered this question before, but my curiosity continues on this. People want to know how this thing came about, who approached whom, as if that's very important. Who did approach whom?
I asked him. I mean, I don't think Salman came and said, Deepa, I want you to do my film. He didn't. But we have been talking for about a couple of years about working together. And we talk about Shalimar the Clown, we talk about Moore's Last Sigh, and then in Toronto, it happened all in Toronto. We were sitting down and I asked him who had the rights for Midnight's Children. It was not premeditated. I didn't think about it. I just asked. And he said, I do. And I said, how would you feel about me doing a film? And he said, done. So that was it.
Come on.
No, honest to God.
And when you asked him that question, was it with a view towards making the movie, or you?
No. It was definitely, I just felt this innate, strange and inexplicable desire to make Midnight's Children.
But did you presume it was already spoken for by another
filmmaker? Who knew?
filmmaker?
I had no clue, because I mean, it is an iconic book, and it's and it's the booker of the bookers, etc. But I had no clue.
So once you started making the movie with him, and you didn't just take his work, as you point out, he wrote the screenplay for this. How did you resolve whatever differences you had along the way?
We worked very closely together, and I mean, it was a very sort of harmonious working relationship. It's easy to work with Salman because he is not only completely cinematic he thinks in images, and I mean, of course, his language is stunning, etc. But he's also really objective about what will work in a film and what will not. So if I explained to him why a certain thing would not work, he was very open to looking at it and saying, "Yeah, you're right." You know, it was never about ego with him. It was always about the film.
Neat.
We had a good time.
Good. You were born, I guess, within a few years of the lead character in the movie. So did you feel a certain kinship for this character even before you started making the movie?
No, not. I mean, I think no, not really. But what I felt kinship for was a certain point in India's history. My history is not identical to Salim's, like Salman's is to Salim, but it's definitely the family, the grandfather, the father, the mother. I recognize them all because they all felt familiar to my own family.
There's magic in this movie. Would I call it science fiction magic? I don't know what you'd want to call it.
No, never. Don't call it science fiction.
Not science fiction, but okay, what's the better? I mean, there's mysticism and...
mysticism is good. I think, there's a lot of... the magic realism in Midnight's Children is more rooted in realism. And magic became all about the potential, the hope, the glow within these special children, as opposed to Harry Potter or X-Men.
Well, this is it. I didn't mean to say science fiction as in, beam me up, Scotty. But I meant it's not real. There is stuff you're portraying in this movie that is not real. It is mystical.
It's a metaphor, maybe.
Okay, but you're not necessarily known as being somebody who has worked in that realm before. Did you have a clear understanding from the beginning how you wanted to portray that mysticism on film?
Yes, I did. I mean, there's a filmmaker called Amir Kusturica, whose work I just totally admire, and he's done a film called Time of the Gypsies, which again takes that mystical, magical element, but again not in the not beam me up, Scotty mode, and makes it highly personal. So there was a certain vision that I did have, which was similar to more realism in the magic than magic in the realism.
Gotcha. This film, people will not be surprised to hear, is occasionally critical of the ruling family in India, and you have a complicated relationship now with India, and I wonder what the reception in India to the film has been like so far.
It hasn't been released in India.
But they know about it.
They know about it, but maybe I'm naive, Steve. I mean, I really like to think that perhaps it'll all be fine, and the reason, but there's a method to the madness this time, because there is a really reputable film distributor who has bought the rights for Midnight's Children for India and is going to have a really big release for it. So if they feel optimistic, I feel they wouldn't risk money, because it's a business finally, if they felt that it was something horrific would happen to it.
But this is a movie about India, and you didn't shoot.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And did you shoot it in India? No, you didn't.
No, we shot. We shot. We shot about 30% of the film in India, and 70% of all the internal and a few of the exterior scenes are shot in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, Sri Lanka.
Yeah, but we shot in Kashmir, we shot in Delhi. We did a lot of, all the second unit work's done in India.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was that problematic in any way?
Not at all.
Because, one hears these stories about how official India makes it difficult, and the Gandhi family in particular, I guess, makes it difficult on you to shoot there because they don't like some of the stuff you've done.
I did a film called Heaven on Earth, where the beginning of the film, which was just before Midnight's Children, was all shot in India. So I think that perhaps people have an idea that I'm a persona non grata in India. That's not true at all.
It's not the case.
No. I mean, I love to be dramatic and say, yes, it is, but it really isn't.
So you can go back, you can shoot there, you could...
I spend about 6 months of the year in India, and I shoot there, and there's no problem.
Okay. How about Rushdie in Sri Lanka?
No, he was writing his memoirs, and he was supposed to come to Sri Lanka, and he couldn't.
He couldn't go because?
He was writing his memoirs called Joseph Anton.
Okay, but are there any issues of we don't like his politics, we don't like his writing, his...
No, not at all, because
None of
if
that.
they didn't, they wouldn't have given permission. You have to submit the script before, even in Sri Lanka, you just can't go and shoot there. You take the script and you give it to the government of Sri Lanka, and then their home ministry looks at it, and the information of broadcasting looks at it. They knew it. I mean, Midnight's Children is Midnight's Children, you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you started shooting in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, something happened?
3 weeks later, we were shut down for 2 days because the Iranian government complained to the Sri Lankans that a Salman Rushdie novel should not be shot.
Okay, this is what I'm getting at.
No, you have to listen to it because the president of the country actually, when he found out that this is what had happened, actually tore it to bits and said, nobody's going to bully us. So 2 days we were back on track. So, I mean, again, you know, let's talk about being realistic, right?
All right, so you have a perfectly fine relationship with India.
Yes.
You spend lots of time there. What about your screenwriter? Does Rushdie have the same easygoing relationship with India?
I think that's a question for him, you know.
Okay. He was here on that bench.
What did he
actually.
say?
Well, I didn't ask him that. I was asking him about
Well, you
another
should
book.
have asked him.
Should have
I
asked him
don't
that
know.
time.
You know, his relationship is his relationship. But what I do know is that, you know, it can be problematic at times. But Midnight's Children is not banned in India. It's a very loved book. And he might have problems with a certain part of the society in India, but, you know, with others, he's still, as he is, a very well-loved writer.
Did you ever, his books are, you know, occasionally complicated. Did you ever have misgivings about whether the book would be completely accessible on the screen or off the screen, for that matter?
If I had any misgivings, I would have never done it. I had like zero. I mean, you have to be critical about your own work, whether you develop Midnight's Children or Earth or Babsy, you know, whatever novel, Constant Gardener, I don't know, Anna Karenina, War and Peace. You know, you have to believe in it. Otherwise, why do it? It's tough.
The process of trying to make the India of today look like the India of the 1940s, how did you do that?
That's why we didn't shoot in India, because the India of today just doesn't reflect the India of the 40s or the 50s or even the 70s. I mean, we went to Bombay and we went to Agra and we went to Delhi, and the skyline is totally different. I mean, you know, the skyscrapers, the monorails, the flyovers, the BMWs. I mean, it's you know, we would have had to shoot the whole film in a studio.
Right. So how did you do it? Did you do those parts in Sri Lanka?
That's what we shot in Sri Lanka.
I see.
Because Sri Lanka, sadly, because of its civil war, had been caught in a sort of a time warp. And for 30 years, there really hadn't been any sort of industrial development and real estate development. So we just got in at the moment before the boom started. And so there were many locations that are very similar to the ones in India. So the old colonial houses, the tropic, you know, the ocean, for example. And
so that big, white, almost plantation-like looking colonial mansion, where was that?
That's Sri Lanka.
That's in Sri Lanka?
Yeah. It would be so rare to find something like that in India now, because they've all been sort of demolished and huge skyscrapers have been built in their place.
Salman has said that he looked at Midnight's Children as his sort of love letter to India. Do you see it that way?
He has said that it's his love letter, and I hope the film reflects that love. You know, I certainly felt it when I was doing it.
Does it feel like a love letter, though, of yours as well, like your love
It's
letter?
different. It's a different kind of a love letter because they both are very different mediums. And yes, you know, I think the film in its essence is very true to the book. Salman feels that too. Now, that's a big thing. But it's different, you know.
I'm trying to imagine what you would have done if you got to the end of the movie and showed him what would have been, in your view, the final cut. And what if he'd looked at it and said, not working for me?
Oh, it would have been dreadful. It would have been just horrific. And it did cross my mind while he was seeing it, that, you know, he might well turn around and say, oh my God, I really can't stand this. And I remember that thought coming to my mind. I said, I'm not going to deal with it, because if I do, I'll be paralyzed, you know. So luckily for me, he loved it.
I'm going to bring up another little bit of criticism here, that films about India, such as Slumdog Millionaire, for example, are, you know, called things like white man's India, white men imagining India, that kind of thing, you know, as opposed to the real deal. So do you think there are films being made about India today that are actually accurately portraying the India of today?
I think there are some. I mean, Indians are making films about India that are portraying India today. During the film festival, there was a whole crop of new films by new filmmakers that actually TIFF was showing that were just extraordinary. There was one I saw called The Ship of Theseus, which was stunning. You know, a young Indian filmmaker in India, and that was great. So there are films being made.
Because it seems like, and this is a vast overgeneralization, I know, but it seems like you get either the Slumdog Millionaire type of picture, or you get the Bollywood type of picture. But they're, you know, mind you, I have that on my list here. Ship of Theseus is one. But you don't necessarily get those other pictures that maybe reflect the reality of Indian life today.
Well, I mean, The Ship of Theseus does, and in fact, even a film I called Shanghai did, which was very impressive. And there was another one called Ishqzadeh. They're really bright young filmmakers that talk about corruption, that talk about politics, that talk about the Indian mafia. They're just sprouting all over. Fabulous.
And are getting decent release?
Getting huge releases, not outside the country as yet. But I'm sure as the diaspora becomes more aware of them, I think they'll be the first ones to embrace it, and then I'm sure they'll be really embraced.
Gotcha. You know Stephanie Nolan from the Globe and Mail?
Yes, I do.
She wrote the following during her coverage of TIFF this past September. She wrote, "Ask most North American critics what they're excited about, and it's not Indian film." She's quoting Asim Chabra, the New York-based film critic for the Mumbai Mirror and a TIFF regular. Quote, "But Indian film is making a slow turn." Now, the question is whether the rest of the world and audiences in India can look past their expectations of sequins and dance routines and notice something new. Do you agree?
I'm sure they can, yes. Actually, I think, in fact, my reply to that is I can understand why she would think, or Asim would think, that maybe it isn't becoming, the turnaround isn't fast enough, but it's happening, that's for sure.
Are we finding out about it?
Slowly. I mean, you know, it starts with film festivals. So the fact that TIFF had a whole section of the new Indian films, and then like a couple of days later, I was at the London Film Festival, and they had the similar films. And 3 days later, I was in Spain, and they had similar films. So it's starting to happen slowly.
What about life in India that would be accurate, that we're not necessarily seeing in other films, do you think we're missing? What is that, you know, that certain something about life in India that we're missing in film right now?
I think that the films that you see here are either Bollywood, or the ones that are popular, or Slumdog Millionaire, or Hotel Marigold, or Exotic, whatever it was. And neither are based on total reality. I think that the aspects of Slumdog Millionaire that are absolutely true about, like, Dharvi, or, you know, like Catherine Boo's book was, and but it's not. It's an interpretation which is not necessarily incorrect, but it's an interpretation.
You know, it's awfully good of you to spend so much time with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Deepa Mehta,
Steve.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.